Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, I got a fun and exciting episode for you guys today because as of earlier this morning, Croc, the Legend of the Gobbos is now available on Steam. If you know me and you know the channel, there's two things I love. It is a PlayStation 1 era platformer, and it is remasters of different games. And this is one of the games that I played so much back in the day. I was basically just trying to get every single 3D platformer out there. Stuff like Crash Bandicoot, Croc, Mario, even stuff like Jersey Devil, which I know is not a good game, but I still love because I just basically got completely addicted to 3D platformers growing up as a kid, and Croc was definitely one of my favorites. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, got a Patreon link down below as well. But this code was actually sent over by Argonaut Software, and I am under no obligation to say anything about it I don't want, but I wanted to be very upfront about that. And yes, we have had this on consoles for a while now, but it is available on Steam, and that is always awesome, because I know a lot of you just basically use your PC as your primary gaming device and don't really get into modern consoles, at least on my commenter side of things. And I will say right off the top, I just absolutely love what they've done with the remaster here, both graphically and control wise. This is completely redone. You have free range of motion with the camera on the right analog stick, and that is something that I feel like has definitely been improved compared to PlayStation 1 Croc. But honestly, that's really not that surprising, because in this era, basically every developer was learning how 3D cameras worked in a 3D space, because only a few years previous 3D didn't exist in the home market. It was all 2D consoles in the 16-bit era. And I will say, as far as the remastered graphics and models, keeps all of the charm and all of the fun and colorful nature of Croc while just bringing it to a modern audience. And these are the type of things that really do matter, not just for us, the consumers that are playing games as a remastered version that we played back in the day, but also new audiences. I always think about the fact that I introduced my nephew Charlie to Crash Bandicoot by buying him the Insane Trilogy, and all of those remastered graphics just fell in love with. And honestly, he still plays that game today every once in a while, versus had I shown him Crash Bandicoot on PlayStation 1, because he was much younger, obviously, when he was born, he wouldn't really gravitate towards them because it just doesn't look like a quote-unquote video game to him. That is what stuff like remasters of classic games do. They're not just for us, they're for a new generation. But if you do like more of that original Croc look, you can go into the graphics and turn back on the retro settings, so you're going to get original textures as well as original model polygon counts. Now granted, this is not running on a PlayStation 1 or an emulator, so all of the polygons are going to be stable. You're not going to get any wobble there, which is kind of a really nice improvement. In some ways, this feels kind of like running it on DuckStation, except with a lot more quality of life improvements under the hood. But the fact that you can instantaneously go from the remastered version of Croc all the way back to the original models and textures really does give it kind of a dual purpose here. You can get that retro aesthetic, you can get the completely modern version of the game, or you can kind of mix and match them, turning on lighting sources and keeping the original models but nicer textures. And I really do like that is a kind of design philosophy, giving the player the decision-making power to decide what it is they want the game to look like. For me personally, I seem to switch back and forth depending on the level I'm playing, just to kind of see what it looks like in real time, and I do like that. And I have gone through the entirety of Croc, kind of playing around with it before I did any sort of review, but I usually just show you guys the intro kind of worlds to games, because if you've never played Croc before, I don't want to spoil anything, and if you have played Croc before, you basically know right off the top if there's going to be something that's interesting to you or not, because it's one of those things, if you didn't grow up with it, but you do want some new 3D platformers, definitely going to fill that void for you. And if you do love Croc, you probably didn't need to watch a review to tell you maybe you should pick this version up on Steam. But this game is just something that I played so much in my childhood, and honestly, I have some really fond memories of, outside of the fact that all of my friends told me that it was a baby game, and that is a direct quote when I was playing it, and that I should have bought something different. I kind of felt a little bit bad about that back then, but the reality is I was correct and still am. Croc is an absolute banger of a 3D platformer, and they were just basically missing out on a great game because it wasn't quote-unquote mature graphics, and that definitely shines through here. And one of the things I always loved about Croc was its soundtrack, and it sounds even better on the remaster, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds. I'll come back and talk a lot about the mechanical changes to the game. I always love the soundtrack to Croc, and it's no different here because it is the original music, and this really is the original Croc, just completely redone for a modern audience. But the movement of the camera and the fact that this is running at a much higher frame rate than the original Croc ever ran at definitely is a bonus. But I will say I do the exact same thing today that I did back in the 90s when I was a kid. I always rush the lava jumps and for some reason keep falling in. So it's going to play basically identically. There's nothing about this here when I'm playing Croc that doesn't feel like the original version of the game. It just feels like a faster, more fluid version, and it definitely looks a lot prettier. But you can leave me a comment down below and you tell me, do you prefer all of the remastered textures and artwork as well as the models, or do you like the retro look a little bit more? But that's what I love about people when they do these remasters and give us both options, because honestly, not one is going to satisfy everyone out there, and it's one of those things, everyone has their own subjective opinion on what a game should look like, so giving them the options means that no one's going to be in the comments saying, I just wish they had done this instead, because you have both of those options. And stuff like this I just remember as a kid being so charmed by, and even today still am. I was recently at the NLDS Game 4 between the Cubs and the Brewers. Unfortunately, the Cubs lost Game 5, and they have a ball under a hat game that they show on the Jumbotron, and 40,000 people are just screaming at what number hat that ball is underneath. I don't know what it is about that game that just basically makes humans go crazy, but I still fondly remember it from Croc. But the one thing that's completely intact and unchanged is the game's personality. It was always a little bit cheesy in all of the best cartoonish ways, and that just comes across so much here still. And with the improved models and facial expressions, it kind of is a little bit more readable as far as the game is concerned. And all of the physics seem to be adhering to exactly what I remember Croc to play like. And I would say the last time I played Croc was probably last year or the year before on Mr. FPJ. So controlling Croc and doing everything, his moveset and otherwise, in the remaster just seems to work like I remember it. And it is fun that this has been brought over to Steam today, because I'm sure people are going to go in there and maybe even play around and try to mod some more stuff into Croc. And of course the console versions are updated as well today to that new version that's going to give you new features. But I'm really curious, leave me a comment down below and you tell me, did you play Croc back in the day or not? It's one of those games, people that played it fondly remember it, but a lot of people say it's just something they skipped over back in the day. And I'm not sure if that's just down to the fact the review scores weren't as high as stuff like Crash Bandicoot or Mario, or maybe it was just because the entire 3D platformer market was basically oversaturated because it was the big genre of the 32-bit era. But I'm always surprised that people say, oh, I remember seeing Croc but never actually got a chance to look at it. This one area here is one place where I will say that new and improved lighting engine maybe could use a tiny bit of tweaking, because when you get up against the wall there, sometimes the shadows fall off a little bit too dark, but honestly that is a very small complaint in a game that's been so much fun to rediscover, because that is the thing, playing this new version of Croc on Steam gives me the same vibes as back in the day. But a soundtrack sampled 2 times, some more charming music, and I'll be right back with more. I love the light horror aesthetic of the music in Croc when you're in the caves. There's just something about this generation of 3D platformers that everyone tries to recapture, and very few people are successful. Sure, we get a lot of 3D platformers today still, but honestly I would say like 8 out of 10 of them just don't really make me feel the same way as the 32-bit era 3D platformers do. Now don't get me wrong, there's definitely some amazing new platformers made out there, but it is a little bit rare to find a one that you really stick with versus playing like 3 or 4 and having the content theming or just gameplay not stick. I would say for my money, something like the new Astrobot in PlayStation 5 does exactly what I need out of a platform, and that's because it has the same sense of charm, whimsy, and overall kind of cartoonish nature that something like Croc has. And I love that you can even have the retro style aesthetic in some of the cutscenes, or you can actually go to the modern as well. It is a really fun thing to mix up, but this definitely just makes me happy. Having Croc back out into the wild and having more people discover it for the first time or replaying it for the 10th time is just something thing that always gets me excited, because there's so many incredible games from the PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn era that maybe people haven't played before, or maybe it's the type of thing you want to introduce your kids to some of the games you loved back in the day, but getting them to sit down at a PlayStation 1 is a little bit difficult because they just say it looks too old. Stuff like this allows you to show your kids or other people a game that you love fondly from back in the day and get them as hooked into it as you were back in the 90s. Like I said, I was absolutely enamored with Croc when it came out. I probably beat the game like 3 or 4 times that year alone. So it's one of those things that's out on Steam today. Definitely a fun time, and big thanks to the publisher for sending the code over. And I want to stress again, none of the codes that I get for review come with any preconditions. I could have said this was absolutely terrible if it was, but the nice thing is it is fun as hell because it is just Croc, and that's always a good thing. But we are done. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.